Mi gente, you already know who it is. It's the radioactive pop with Danny Limelight, United Wrestling Network World Heavyweight Champion. And make sure you tune into the Alliance blog every week. You heard it here first. Straight from Bobby.
They want NWA? Let's give them NWA.
Who are those guys?
And then there's the other guys.
We're the other guys. We're the guys nobody ever bets on.
The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
It's time for the Other Alliance Guys podcast with your hosts, Tim, Dave, and Jeremy.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and what can we tell you? It's the Other Alliance Guys, a presentation of alliance-wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information around the National Wrestling Alliance. Hey, everybody. You guys have been active in the chat already. My name's Tim. This guy over here is Jeremy. How are you, my friend?
I'm feeling major league.
Yeah, we are going major league. And speaking of, he's repping the MLW material right now. Dave Scooby, how are you?
Doing well.
Fantastic. Lots of guys in the chat tonight. I am excited to be here because we are doing, as well, David's visually alluded to, and Jeremy has vocally alluded to, we are doing our first recap ever of an MLW event, Fusion. I know nothing about this company, but I'm telling you, I watched it and I dug it. Thought it was pretty great. So in the absence of NWA USA, we're going to have an MLW Fusion review, which we'll run through. And again, I'm looking at it, like I know you guys watch this stuff. I'm looking at it as a first-time viewer. So I'm excited to be here. What else are we going to do? We'll do a little roundtable stuff first. But Jeremy's got the best of the UWN and Championship Wrestling from Jeremy. And the Fantasy Booker. I respect you, Booker, man. He's going to talk about what happens to EC3 if, heaven forfend, he doesn't win the TOAG, the 10 pounds of gold. What will happen to him in the NWA? Dave's going to tell you exactly what will happen. He's predicting it. He's guaranteeing it. Stamp of approval. This is the way it'll be. Right, Dave?
Let's hope so.
Well, if it's good, let's hope so.
Let's hope so. Fingers crossed, eyes crossed, legs crossed.
Yeah, I don't want him to return 5 months later after a loss to job out to Orlando twice.
No.
I saw on the Discord that someone didn't want this put into the ether, that the possibility of EC3 not winning the 10 pounds of gold, and that's what we do on here. We cover all the bases, so that way, you know, these things happen. This is Billy's NWA. It's a whole different ball game here.
Yeah,
you know, so we like to cover all the bases, even the fictional ones.
That's right. That's absolutely true. And you know, we'll talk about it, but I didn't write this out to you guys. Talk about it beforehand, but are you guys disturbed that in the 4 weeks, I guess we have left, 4 weeks or so, before 75, that because of injury, understood, the world's heavyweight champion is not at the TV tapings? I don't know. Dave, what do you think?
I mean, it's really weird. Haven't heard anything really online. I know he's been doing his, I guess, they're calling it a comedy show, but it's him doing his show. That Tyrus is, quote unquote, selling out wherever he is. Wherever he goes, he sells out. Hey, that's cool for him, but what's it doing for the NWA? He can have the belt there, but are the people there to see the belt? They're there to see him.
Right.
He could easily sit down like we are, get his phone out, or have his kids hold a camera and do updates. Hey, I'm not feeling so well. I've been going through rehab. My knee's messed up. My ankle's messed up. Whatever. Drop those in the programming. But I promise I'll be at 75. I will defend the belt. Just do something. I mean, if you're not going to be there, you can be there without being there.
Yep. As Willie Bowen drops the first Tyrus joke at what I'm sure will be many of the night. Thank you, Willie, for being here. Lamb asks our buddy Lamb, does he even advertise the show on social media? I don't know.
And that's the thing. If he's making more off of his comedy shows than he is from being the NWA World Champion, then he has no incentive to show up for the NWA.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's
if you fell on
that's not the champ I want.
Right. And if you fell on the side of the fence, which would be fine, all opinions are valued here and equal, that Tyrus was good for the NWA and should be NWA World's Heavyweight Champion even now. Like if that was your position, okay. But if he's injured and he can't be at the tapings, well, what happened to Matt Cardona? He was injured. He handed the belt over at Always Ready, his own pay-per-view. So it's time, right?
Right.
Yep. So, something needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. Let's see what happens. We'll see what happens at 75. But like we talked about, we're going to be talking about Major League Wrestling and Media Mike's here. Yeah, it feels like that MLW is going in the right direction from almost 2 years ago when it had its closure by court on its original run. As I understand it, only this week there was 174 episodes ago, a restart of the MLW, and I'm digging what I'm seeing for the most part. And it's funny because I started watching it and I went, already I have criticisms, but it was a good show. And we'll get into that. Steve G is here. Thank you for being here, Steve. Obviously, Willie's here. We know that. I gotta get through. Me and Mike were talking before the show. Money Mike, and Lamb is here, of course. Tyrus, Willie says, a Pillsbury Doughboy should have dropped the 10 pounds of gold to Chris Adonis. Yeah.
Yep.
Let's talk about the NWA. Let's start with that and go from there. I got a cool logo. Look at this. Boop. Nice, eh? Look at this. Working overtime around here.
Is that the current logo?
Huh?
Is that the current logo?
I don't know. It was the logo I found that I could remove the backing of and slap up here.
Yep.
There you go.
It's as close as I can get. No one's paying me.
Yeah.
The NWA, first of all, excuse me, they had that Boca Raton show, NWA versus Boca Raton Championship Wrestling.
Yeah.
And not super advertised, but, advertised by the NWA. I'm just going to read the results and think about this for a second. You could count if you wanted to. You had a BRCW Heavyweight Championship match where the champion, forgive me if I'm getting the name wrong, LaKay, defeated Jamie Stanley. So I'm going to count for BRCW on this hand, and then I'm going to count for the NWA on this hand, okay?
All right.
Mike Knox and Trevor Murdoch defeated the Island Kings in a tag team match. Cha-Cha Charlie defeated Joe Alonzo by DQ. That is a DQ, but still counts. Tom Latimer beat Noah Kakoa for a World Television Championship match. Then we had a singles match that was all BRCW. A tag team match, Pretty Empowered defeated MJ Jenkins and, that's actually all NWA, and Ruthie J. And then Mark Long in a BRCW All-Star Championship match defeated the Throwbilly Silas Mason. I got to think that's a little bit of an upset. Kerry Morton defeated Alan Martinez, and Bull James and Gangrel defeated Daisy Kill and Talos. As I count it, that's 4-3 in favor of Boca Raton Championship Wrestling if you were counting. My only question about the show before we move on and go, it doesn't really matter. Do you guys have an opinion? Jeremy, do you have an opinion if BRCW winning just over half of the matches in their home territory, does it even matter?
In the long run, no, not really. It puts over their guys without really hurting anybody that's of note in the NWA at this time. You know, Kerry won. He's a belt holder. So he at the very least made Alan Martinez look good.
Right.
You know, it was competitive, I'm sure. The one that I was disappointed with was Mark Long defeating Silas Mason, but that's their BRCW All-Star Championship. So again, I'm sure it was one of those. Silas looked strong, I would hope, you know, at the very least. But at the end of the day, like I said, it doesn't hurt the NWA because none of our champions or anything were defeated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even in non-title matches.
I think Dave, by your nod, you look like you probably agree.
I do agree. It doesn't help, but it doesn't hurt.
Right.
It's basically it's a freebie.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Unless you were there or you dug to find out results, in the long run, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that these matches don't mean anything, but in the long run, it doesn't affect NWA programming unless they choose to use some clips from this show, which, hey, a week before 75, Kerry's been on a run as the junior heavyweight champion. Here's a couple of the shows he's been defending the belts at. And they show 30 seconds of the Boca Raton show.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to know that other NWA talent were there. And I mean, their champion winning against Jamie Stanley. All Jamie Stanley has to do is, well, I'm a manager now. Somebody didn't show up and I had to step in.
Right.
There you go.
So, like you said, Tim, it makes the Boca Raton champions look good, and it doesn't harm the NWA talent.
Yeah. And here's another thing too that I was thinking about while I was looking at the names that are on here. It gave the NWA exposure in Florida. Cesar Bononi, if I remember correctly, was at one time paired with Riddick Moss in NXT and is also Mandy Rose's husband or boyfriend, fiance, whatever. So he's a former WWE NXT guy that Billy could possibly bring in at a later time that has some name value. Granted, it's not necessarily all his. A lot of that can be attributed to Mandy Rose, but it's still a former WWE NXT guy. So he kind of has some knowledge of the inner workings of how they did their TV and stuff. Then you've got Gangrel. I mean, the gimmick's old, but it's still Gangrel. He still works it really good, you know, as best as he can. And he's a name. He's another name, you know.
Yeah. Mike's sounding off in the chat as well. Didn't think the NWA benefited, but I agree with you guys. I don't think it really hurt in the end. I don't know who owns Boca Raton Championship Wrestling, but on their website, there's a Matthew Mashler as their CEO, and he's a real estate guy. And they got Neil Glazier, Neil the Heel, who's as their executive VP, who looks like he's sort of the mind behind it.
Okay.
So I don't know if they are people that people know, but I think it's okay that the NWA, the NWA doesn't really lose anything from here, and maybe makes relationships down in Florida with someone that can feed them talent from time to time. So probably an okay deal after all. Let's talk about, without putting some graphics up or anything, let's talk about 75, because it's 16 minutes in, so let's jump right into it. I would say that. Okay, so some of the event continues to unfold, and there are some matches that are on night 1, some matches that are on night 2, and some that haven't been determined where they're going to go yet. Let me just go back to the chat for a sec. Mike's on Twitch. Appreciate you giving some love. Polar Knights. Nice. The evolution of the beard growth is back. Yeah, I'm the baby, and I guess Dave is the adolescent and Jeremy's the old man.
I'm the youngest one on here.
That's true. It's true. I think Dave's older than me. Aren't you older than me, Dave?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think you look younger. I think you're all right. Let me see here. So we've talked about a bunch of these matches already, and I don't want to go over the same thing, but we know night 1 will be Camille versus Markova. And I thought this was interesting because on night 2, the winner of the Burke Invitational Gauntlet from night 1 will face either Camille or Markova. So it makes me think, because I think a lot like Dave Scooby went out these days after sitting with him weekly. It makes me think, if Camille's victorious night 1, maybe she's injured bad, and Markova can't quite get the job done. Whatever happens, happens. But it would be a good opportunity if you had, for some reason, if the feeling was get the belt off of Camille, which I'm not for. You could have her injured in night 1 and put her over and put someone else over in night 2. And looking at night 1, the Burke Invitational Gauntlet, we've got Allison Kay returning. I've seen her over in the UWN recently. Jeremy's fan. CJ is wrestling.
Yeah.
100%. Finally, Christy Janes cannot be contained. Heather Monroe returns to the NWA after, I'm going to say, a few years away now.
Yeah.
Wasn't she Jay's seatmate next when he flew to China?
Yep.
Yep. Great. Versus MJ Jenkins. I like MJ Jenkins.
Yep.
Good talent. Ruthie J, who is a phenomenal young athlete. Samantha Starr, who's come a long way in her year in the NWA. And Sierra, who we saw once, I believe, before now, but was a pretty good talent up in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Taylor Rising, which has got to be a play on Terror Rising, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know her. The Woad. And you love the Woad.
Yeah.
What's not to love? And then, of course, the always to be determined, to be announced, which we have.
Who could that be? Somebody's wrestling a week earlier in Chicago, and that's only a few hours away.
Tell everyone, because not everyone's in the Discord. It's my cat.
At Warriors of Wrestling on, I believe, the 19th, which is the Saturday the week before. There's a young lady that is going to be there by the name of Tessa Blanchard. She is back in the ring, and who knows what could happen. I mean, she's patched up misunderstandings. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah. Things that were said and things that were done. Things have been patched up. La Rosa Negra, I believe, is still with the NWA, although she is injured. She's working her way back, hopefully. But I'm like, why not give it a shot? If it works, it works. If not, we get a little attention for something that we rolled the dice on.
Yep. No better place to rehab your career than the NWA.
So it's one of these things. If it works, it works. And with a pay-per-view, it's live, so we will get instant reaction.
Yeah.
Will be reaction the day after, but we'll get instant reaction then. Whereas the NWA is fairly good at, when they do their tapings, a lot, unless you're there and you spread the word of here's spoilers, there's not a lot out there. There may be these matches were recorded, but they don't give a winner or a loser. So
Yeah.
it's these
And
things
finding anyone to talk about it online is they're talking about what went on outside of winning or losing online.
Mm-hmm.
Ain't happening.
Look, I want the chat to chime in on this. This is roundtable, so to speak, right now. So, like Willie often says, Savannah Evans, Cassandra Golden, Viperous, Ruzy Reyes, Rekka Tahaka, all great names, all names that could come in. What about Tessa Blanchard? I want to know what everybody thinks. She's got a reputation. She was involved in an accusation about her conduct. She has appeared to make it up with at least one of those people who have spoken out against her in the past. They seem to have buried the particular hatchet. Let me know in the chat if you guys think she would be good to appear at 75. I can't think of anyone better myself.
And since we're on subject of questionable people that the NWA should or might bring in, did I hear right that the NWA tweeted out a whoop whoop?
They did.
Yep.
You might have to explain that one, because honestly, I had to look into it myself. As soon as I saw it.
Whoop whoop was the cry for anyone in the chat that doesn't know. Villain Inc., which at the time was a very intriguing faction. You had Marty Scurll, you had Brody King, PCO. Just very interesting, and they were making big strides. And then some very disturbing accusations came out about Marty Scurll. There was allusions to him coming into the NWA and playing a big part in the championship chase, and then that went away, rightfully so. I don't want to see him in the NWA.
It was.
I wish him well on all of his further endeavors, but may they be outside of wrestling where he doesn't have access to big swaths of people.
Yeah, I get the viewpoint. What he did, even if it wasn't illegal, was icky in a serious way.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I think I lean towards what you think. What about you, Dave?
It's one of these things. It's not a no harm, no foul. He doesn't fit.
Yeah.
He was brought in. He has a past with Nick Aldis.
Yep.
At that time, ROH and the NWA were somewhat sharing talent, but it's one of these things of wrong place, wrong time. It's not the right time to bring him in, if at all, or if ever.
Yeah.
I kind of agree in the sense that you're going to bring in Marty Scurll. Okay, you're going to bring in David Starr, Max Barsky, if you want to call him that. I mean, that guy's far worse.
Yeah.
There's that other guy who got rightfully tossed aside. I forget. They took his name off the belt and It'll come to me. But here's what the chat says. Mike says, let Billy decide. In his opinion, give Tess a shot, give her an ultimatum. Fuck up one time, you're gone. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Lamb says, Tess is fantastic, would be a great addition outside the ring, different story. But the NWA needs attention and big headlines, so whatever it takes.
Mm-hmm.
She said things, which, again, not agreeing with anything that she said at all.
Right.
No defense, but saying things to an individual or individuals that you can turn around later on once you've had some personal growth and matured and go back and apologize to those people. If those people accept that, it's not in our place to continue to hold that against the offender at that point.
Yeah. I think if it's cleared up with the people that has been dealt with, great.
Yeah.
On that same front, though, I mean, I realize this is hypocritical, but I don't need to see Rick Steiner anymore.
No.
He can just go away and not be around. What did I want to say? Joey Ryan. So Lamb and Mike put that one out. Willie said, as long as she doesn't have a toxic attitude, she could be on the roster.
Yeah.
And also get PCO. Sure, buddy. He's like 50. I don't know. It doesn't matter. He's not human.
He's still going though. He just had a match with Tommy Dreamer over in Memphis, and literally they tore the house down. They tore the ring down. Literally.
I never noticed this. When it comes to Wednesday Alliance talk, TOAG is GOAT backwards. It's just destiny, guys.
Wow.
That's amazing. We got to get shirts that, like, you know, those collar and elbow shirts that flip upside down, the mirror image. Yep. TOAG GOAT. I love it. Anyway.
Maybe it's not the greatest of all time. Maybe it's the goodest of all time.
Yeah, the okayest podcast of all time. I have a sign at work that one of my employees gave me that I put it on my desk. It says world's okayest boss.
We are the B-est squad of all time.
The B-est. Until they make the other alliance guys and we're dropped to the sea. Yep. We're just reviewing like Memphis. That's it. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, man. Joey Ryan shows up, by the way. That's it for me. I'm out. Yeah. Let's go back to 75. After the Burke Invitational Gauntlet and see who fights either Markova or Camille. Stacey Killen, Talos versus the Fixers. I got to think that's probably pre-show. I don't know that matters, but the winner goes on to night 2 to face the Country Gentlemen. So night 2 obviously has Tyrus versus EC3, La Rebellion or BFT versus Knox and Murdoch. I got to think new champs at that point.
Yeah.
Camille and Markova, as we mentioned, versus the Burke Invitational Gauntlet winner, and the Country Gentlemen versus Talos or Killer, the Fixers. So we got a whole bunch of night 1 stuff matters into night 2, like we did before. So the other matches for that particular card, Kerry Morton versus Colby Carino. I really look forward to that one. I love both those guys.
Yep.
We got JR Kratos, who I imagine will be back at that point from his, I'm going to say, is it like a travel? You're not allowed to fly with your head injury right now. I did hear something about that. Can't come back from Japan or in order to make the tapings. Crazy. Versus Odinson versus Thrill Billy. And they're sort of a tag team against Thrill Billy. And as much as I kind of like those guys, some more than others, not a big fan of that particular match.
No.
It doesn't really grab me. Tom Latimer versus somebody, Kenzie Page versus somebody, M95 versus somebody. And that's kind of, I guess, a topic unto itself. I don't have any build-up. 4 weeks away for Latimer, for Page, for M95. Who's going to face these guys? We got to see some reveals coming out on Power, right? Something's got to happen.
Hope so.
Fingers crossed.
It's crazy. Willie wants Jordan Grace on the ladies roster. Yeah, should be great. I think she's bodybuilding, but yeah. Tommy Dreamer, Mike says, also the No Limits champ for WoW Warriors of Wrestling in Staten Island. Yeah, I was saying in the chat earlier, it's Warrior Wrestling versus Warriors of Wrestling, and they're two different promotions from what we said. Sorry about that. Matt Cardona's got his open challenge we've talked about. And then Homicide versus Joe Alonzo. Okay. I got to think that if that's happening, that would be night one pre-show because Gary's... Yeah.
Yeah. When was the last time we saw Homicide?
It's been a while. It has been a while. I don't know. But I do know one thing. Let me ask you guys a question. You guys like tag team wrestling?
Love it.
Yeah. You guys like the Crockett Cup?
Yeah.
Guess what Ricky Morton found? Or at least discovered that it's coming home. The 86, 87, I'm going to say 88 Crockett Cup, the original Crockett Cup, won by the likes of the Road Warriors, by Dusty Rhodes and Nikita Koloff, and by Sting and Lex Luger. Then, of course, the original tournament ended. And I have often posed before in Crockett Cup bios, which I've done a few of. Where the hell is it? I said once, is it in Sting's garage? Like, is it in Luger's attic right now? Where the hell is it? Because, like, the Crockett Foundation themselves in past years, fairly recently, but in past years, had the Crockett Cup, the Crockett Foundation Cup.
Yeah.
Which was a different thing that never really got much exposure, but they had it with a small-time promotion somewhere in the U.S. They had their own cup, and they didn't use it. So that said to me, I didn't have it. Ricky Morton put on Twitter just this past week, it's coming home to the NWA. So he's located it, and he hasn't told us the story, probably part of the deal. And we have heard from some people that it's going to the NWA. It's going into Billy's possession. That's an interesting thing already, but I'm sure he'll tell us that story as it comes through. What do you think about this thing, Dave, and it coming home, the original one?
Well, I'm glad that it was found. I'm just wondering why it was in Ricky's possession and why he didn't know it was in his possession. And I would encourage any and all legends of NWA that are working with the NWA to look in their storage lockers, look in their garages, look wherever, because if it's part of the past and it's not yours, I'm sure Billy would be willing to pay up for some of the history, legacy, and tradition of the NWA, which he owns, but he doesn't own certain parts of the NWA.
That's true. I was gonna say that in Ricky's defense, the 80s and the 90s were a wild time, and cocaine is a hell of a drug.
Listen. Sometimes Mike's just so funny. You gotta risk the demonetization to look something up. But I don't know that Ricky said, "Oh, I found this in my basement." Oops. I think he just said it's been found. It's coming home. And the reason I think that when we hear the story, whenever it comes out, that Ricky didn't have it, that's a Birds banner on the wall, baby. Go Birds. Go Gang Green. Go Philly. That's my team. But I don't think Ricky's a Philadelphia Eagles fan. That seems wrong to me if he is. So I don't know, but it will be interesting to see if he had it all this time. By the way, this is the one replica I keep right here. Look at that, baby. Philadelphia Eagles. Super Bowl champions. Yeah. Anyway.
Well,
DKM, by the way, has like, I don't know. I asked him once recently, how many belts do you have? And he's like, I don't know, like 45 to 60.
yeah.
And I'm like, oh, can we just do a show where like you bring the belts out and just show them? And he's like, maybe someday if I find them. Like,
If you find them, they're buried underneath all his Princess Diana memorabilia.
Well, I mean, yeah, he's big into the monarchy for sure. Yeah, he's got a ton of stuff, but that's that is what Rick James said on the Dave Chappelle show. You are correct.
That was what the crackhead down the street told me back in the early aughts. Cocaine's a hell of a drug. I didn't get that from Rick James. I got that from a crackhead down the block, bro.
You got to get off the streets, buddy. You got to get off the streets.
That was 20 years ago plus.
I'm super excited that the Crockett Cup is coming back into Billy's possession, like it's just been found. And I don't love the Crockett Cups that they've used in past years. It's not even the same one, like in recent years. This year's isn't last year's. I mean, it's a different trophy. I like and this one is huge. It's just bigger than Rolando. Like it's enormous. So I'm super excited that it'll be found. Something else I wanted to throw up in case you guys haven't seen it out there in the chat is Camille's made a movie. And she revealed this the other day. She has spent her summer filming her first movie, where it's called Queen of the Ring. I believe the executive wrestling consultant on it is Jim Ross. It's about Mildred Burke, and of course Camille, the holder of the Burke title, which was not only named after Mildred Burke, but also a pretty decent, modern day version of what the Burke looked like.
Yeah.
Made by Belts by Dan, leatherbydan.com, by the way. Fantastic belt maker.
Yep.
And she's playing June Byers, also a legendary wrestler who I believe Camille is going to pass shortly on the list as all-time days spent as champion. So that's super exciting. No release date for that yet, but it's cool. We got guys with like Iron Claw. Who did we get in that? We got Thrillbilly, Brady Pierce. Isn't MJF playing Lance Von Erich in that movie?
MJF is in there yet.
And Zac Efron, I saw a picture. The guy looks like $1 million right now. He looks like Kerry Von Erich.
Yeah.
He's just a kid to me, and by memory, he's Mr. High School Musical. And he looks like he's got away like 250 right now. It looks just all muscle.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's exciting for one of our Alliance favorites, Camille. We look forward to her movie, and all the best to her. Also, the Reluchador's favorite wrestler in the NWA. So that's exciting. Just before we move on to our MLW Fusion review, Jeremy, you saw something that you put it into the Discord. I just heard it yesterday. I haven't seen Pollo Del Mar in the chat yet today, and we'll recall this up should they appear. But hey, thank you to Pollo Del Mar for putting over the Alliance Guys podcast. You're right. She meant us as the other Alliance Guys, but how we knew at least how she's introduced on Pope's Point of View and said, hey, go listen to the Alliance podcast. We appreciate that. Pollo's
very much appreciated. Yeah,
Pollo's been on the show with Jay and often very active in the chat here. So we appreciate that. I just wanted to throw that in. I don't do this one enough. So please watch this briefly just for a moment before we go into MLW Fusion.
PWC Podcast with Rick Del Santo. For all your wrestling reviews, interviews, and news, Rick covers the United Wrestling Network, the NWA, and the Northeast region of the United States Independency. PWC keeps you in the zone.
We don't have a deal with Rick or anything like that. We just like Rick.
Yep.
I mean, he does a hell of a podcast. Like, you go to that YouTube page, it is a litany. It's like every week Rick's got somebody on there, and like, oh my God, I'm gonna, it's like a smorgasbord of all kinds of stuff that you can go into. But speaking of smorgasbord, of buffets, if you will.
Don't say that too loud.
There's
not enough room in here for 4 of us.
Let's go into our very first review of MLW Fusion.
We are MLW. The ultimate stage where fighting styles compete for greatness and gold. Where styles make fights. This is Major League Wrestling.
That's a cool intro. That's cool. Nice job. I can't believe how deep Dave got his voice when he made that too. He was just like,
oh, I wish.
Look, I look at MLW as a guy who's never seen it before. We're going to kind of do this in a new way where who starts actually? Apparently I do. So I'm going to tell you a little bit, and we're going to end up going to Jeremy, then we're going to go to Dave and back and forth as we kind of look at results, a little bit of highlights from this show. But I want to say just off the top, as a guy who's never watched this before, I get right off the bat, even through that intro, it's about clashing different styles together to making new things that maybe you wouldn't normally see. And I felt that when I watched the show, and I loved the production value.
Yep.
It was like someone gave Dave Marquez $10 million more. Like, just say, go and make a show. It was that good. So it seemed like a I should take that now that I see it there. God, trying to keep everything here. Wait a second. Look at this. Look at that. It seemed like a good time for me as a new watcher, and I know originally we set into this because there's no NWA USA for us to review, and that's kind of been the NWA focal point of our show. It's not around for a while. We don't know what's going to happen with that, so we said, well, let's do MLW. It seemed like a good time for me to jump in, and part of it was, this looks a bit familiar in terms of what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
But this is the Opera Cup. MLW's has, so this return is, as I understand it, looking into it, in 2019 after a 71-year hiatus, they claim it is pro wrestling's oldest tournament. And that the last person to win it was Stu Hart in like 48, something like that. And that I believe the Hart family gave the Opera Cup to MLW. Or at least that's how we understand it on the screen anyway. You guys feel to speak up if I'm wrong. But it's kind of cool to step in and they go, okay, it's basically a 4-man tournament, and here's stage 1, and let's see who wins this thing. Do you get a title shot out of winning it, to like any belt you want? That wasn't clear to me.
I'm not really sure if you do, but it ups your clout in being considered for a championship down the line.
Okay. Well, it's a great idea. I'm like, oh, perfect. I get to step into this tournament. A little disappointed that it was only a 4-man tournament, but what are you going to do? I like it when they fight for stuff. And I thought that was fun. I love their little video package in the beginning saying, hey, this is what this is. This is what we're going to fight for. And, we're going to see later tonight, we're going to see Calvin Tankman fight Davey Boy Smith Jr.
Yeah.
All right. We got our first match, Jeremy. Take her away.
So our first match was Becca versus Billy Starks. Becca came out singing her hit song Pop Star, and as she said, this was her first time performing it live, but she actually sang it a few weeks ago at Never Say Never, but had her first interaction with a super fan, which Dave will be talking about that person in a few moments. But I recommend her going all the way back to square one and get more vocal lessons before trying to sing this again, or just stick to wrestling. This was the second match I commented on with Billy Starks. The first was on Derby City, where she went up against Marty Bell. I was impressed then and continue to be impressed. 18, started training at 13, has already been all over the world making a name for herself. I like the handshake at the beginning that they do. This match was Wrestling 101 in a nutshell, essentially. Nothing too flashy. The action was steady with well-placed back and forth. Both are still learning, and it showed through a few times, but nothing that took me out. And they recovered quickly and didn't let it shake them up and lose focus. Playing on the knee, possibly being injured on Billy Starks, and commentary keeping that story going throughout was a nice touch. I didn't care for the standing there, unprotected, eating each other's forearm shots. But that kind of seems like the way that a lot of wrestlers are approaching that nowadays in the ring. So it unfortunately may be the new norm and here to stick around. I hope not, but even my wife was giggling at me because why are you standing there just waiting for her to hit you?
It's a big thing for me with chop spots too.
Yeah. But Starks ended up picking up the win with the swanton off the top turnbuckle. After the match, a member of the calling gave Billy a present, per se. There was brains and liver and
awful,
tongue.
as they call it.
Yeah, awful. Yeah. But during the match, we had a ticker run by of MLW's current top 10. At number 10, we've got Sam Adonis. Number 9, Timothy Thatcher. Number 8, Mance Warner. Number 7, Tracy Williams. Number 6, Akira. Number 5, who we get to see later on, Davey Boy Smith Jr. Number 4, another person that we'll be talking about later on, Ricky Shane Page. Number 3, Alex Hammerstone. Number 2, Jacob Fatu. And the number 1 contender in the MLW right now is Willie and Mac.
Yep.
Yeah, man.
Let's go.
I mean, just you list those names, and as like an NWA guy, that's why I want to be watching this show. I just want to add before Dave, you go. The only downside for this was that this was 15 minutes out of like a 48-minute show. There were 2 break spots, and that they put that list of top 10 right in the middle of this match.
Yeah,
and they opened with it. I was like, oh no. It was fine in the end. Mike says, speaking of lessons, but sorry, Billy Starks. I know people love her age, traveling, yada, yada. She is good, but got to remember, she's still green, no matter how many tapes she studies. There were stutters with the match, as well as doing more glorified indie stuff, such as Jeremy said, with the forearms. For her age, she's fantastic, but she's getting too indie influenced right now. So as you say, 18 years old, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was good.
I believe she just recently signed with AEW.
Yeah.
After her graduation. So whether she's on ROH or AEW, hopefully she's able to get rid of some of the quote unquote indie type moves, because I've seen her wrestle. She can wrestle.
Yes.
And how young she is, she's been in it for at least 4 years strong.
Yep.
It's one of these things of we'll see what happens. She's been in several different places that she wrestles, whether it be MLW or other indies. I'm glad she did get signed, but she is young, and I'm hoping that AEW and ROH allow some of their talent to wrestle outside for some of the independents, just to keep a balance. Because if they're only doing ROH tapings once a month, you don't have a lot to do.
Right. And I think she's going to be great in the same way that, I mean, Austin Theory was a prodigy, and what's his name? That kid right now who's appeared in AEW, lost his opening match. Cornette hated him.
Oh.
I thought he was pretty good. What's his name?
Nick Wayne.
Nick Wayne. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll be one of those deals, and we'll see how it pans out for her. So, but all the best. It was decent opening. What happened after that, Dave?
Well, MLW revealed Love Doug. He's the latest draft pick in the 2023 Open Draft. Now, I really don't know that much about Love Doug. I do know he's wrestled in the Northeast Independents. He is a rabid fan of Becca. So it's almost I guess you'd say a nice stalker, that he is infatuated with Becca, and I could see down the line her using him to her advantage to run interference.
Yeah, she's a heel. Yeah,
but I mean, when I was there a couple weeks ago for the tapings and the pay-per-view, he's massively over. And granted, it was in Philadelphia. We are up in the Northeast.
Yeah.
But it's one of these things of, if all you know about wrestling is AEW and WWE, you're missing out.
Yep.
That if you see some of these people, it used to be AEW had their dark matches, and you'd see people that you really didn't know as opponents to assigned AEW talent. A lot of the opponents and enhancement talent that you see, if they choose to use them on WWE and AEW, they're your next round of superstars. They may not always be, but throwing Love Doug in there, and why not give him a shot? He can wrestle. He has a character, and he's in a storyline. So if it works out, it works out. If not, next.
You know what this is such a small thing, but what I actually liked about him, with that, that little interview he did with Sam Laterna, was like, he's Love, Doug.
Mm-hmm.
Like he signed something, I thought it was kind of cool. Mike had said, oy vey, Nick Wayne. Nick Wayne himself is more famous than his enhancement talent territory father due to fans overmarking for him. I mean, he's a kid, and yeah, he's got a lot of hype around him right now that I guess wasn't there for his dad, but I mean, we know his dad. I know his dad because of his son. So, but there you go. But he's been talked about for a while. Then we get Sam Laterna again with MSL, or Mr. Saint Laurent. And she kind of accosts him backstage. She's our backstage interviewer and says, what's going on? And he is jumped by Microman. So I have, again, no experience with any of these guys right now, but Microman, just going to conservatively say, is half the size of Rolando. Okay. Look, he's like 2.5 feet tall. Like, I don't know. Like, anyway, he jumps and he starts laying the beats into MSL and Mance Warner, and who I gather with the Second Gear crew, SGC. they show up and tell him, Microman's with us now. Touch him and you're dead. Touch him and you're done. And like that'll be the end of that. And they leave him laying with Sam Laterna kind of poking him, going, "Are you all right?" As he kind of rolls back and forth. It was amusing. You know, I don't know anything about these guys, so it wasn't a terrible backstage segment. Jay is here. Hey, boss. Microman rules, says Lamb. Mike says this segment was so effing awkward. It's hilarious. It was awkward.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give them that. Watching Microman is like trying to watch a field mouse survive a hurricane, which I think will be fun, but I reserve judgment into the stuff ahead. Who's up next? Video package, Jeremy.
We got Alex Kane addressing rumors that he big leagued Willie Mack. Alex says that Willie doesn't take being number one contender seriously because he's not in shape, but more of a shape. And that's gross and not becoming of a world championship contender. And further disparaging Willie with all the different fast food places he would hit up, and just pure foolery from this man. I have a few takeaways from this video package. One, Willie could comfortably walk through that gap in Alex's teeth, and Alex would never realize it. So he's not that damn big. Two, from the matches I've seen with both of these guys, Willie is just as agile as Kane, if not more so. And C, when was the last time Alex Kane won a match without the Boombayé Fight Club? Boombayé my ass.
Yeah. I remember that. So, again, new guy. I remember Ali Boombayé from when I was a kid. I don't know if you guys are, it's probably a big, everybody knows. I know it's like a song by that rapper whose name escapes me. But that was Rumble in the Jungle. That's like 1974. That's Ali Foreman in Zaire. And Ali came in there off the plane, charmed everybody, and there's like 100,000 people in that soccer stadium shouting Ali Boombayé, which means kill him.
Yep.
And George Foreman, who ended up years later becoming like Muhammad Ali's best friend, said like I stood in like my knees were knocking, like I thought I wasn't getting out of this stadium alive. So it's a powerful phrase. It was the most watched sporting event in the world at its time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know anything about the Boombayé Fight Club, but I like what I see so far.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, ironically, they were basically running who is backing the Fight Club, who is the backer for Alex Kane, and who is the backer for so-and-so, and how the Fight Club came together. Well, come to find out at Never Say Never, Don King, who, if you know wrestling and boxing, he's a name.
Right.
So he is, quote unquote, their financial backer. And I mean, Alex Kane as champion, the crowd was massively over.
Yeah.
The whole Fight Club. I mean, chanting, clapping, and I mean it's a new start for MLW. Hammerstone had been their champion for, if not close to 2 years, at least a year and a half.
Mm.
With give them a chance. And that's what they ended up doing at Never Say Never.
It's interesting. That's for sure. As Mike say, Kane organically got himself over since day 2 of being in MLW. This is why this worked. I did like the approach of the big leaguing thing, where it seemed very much like a Hollywood clique kind of idea, in like the real sense of the word. I don't mean the Memphis Wrestling, but the other talent, the other rapper or the other superstar comes up and he's like, "Hey man, good job," and they're like, yeah, "Who are you? I don't. Yep. You can't come in, man. That guy wasn't allowed in the club, like literally speaking, right? You gotta he's not on the list." So I really liked it for that as well. And what did Mike say earlier? Kane is nothing compared to Ali. Ali was not. He was a. I don't know why I know this, but Ali was Foreman was a 4-1 favorite going into that fight. That's where Ali proved himself. Was actually delayed like a month and a half because of a sparring accident that Foreman had with his sparring partner. Yeah, Mike, I don't know what's going on, man. Could you just stick to something like, insane? Please.
Yeah, where's the fart jokes, Mike?
We love you, Mike. Willie says Hammerstone should be in the NWA. But like that fight made Ali, and that was after a whole thing too, where he had not been allowed to box for 3 years because he refused to go into the Vietnam War draft. Yep. His boxing license taken away. Don King tried to set everything up. This is partly why they had to go to Africa. I'm going to shut up now. But anyway, it is a great term, and I love the idea for the club already. Stage 1, uppercut, Dave. What happened next?
Davey Boy Smith Jr. ended up defeating Calvin Tankman. This was a very big man match.
Yeah.
And if you've not seen Tankman, for his size, he can really move. It's one of these things. I mean, between what he does and what Willie Mack is able to do, both of those guys are not small guys by any means.
No.
They have some beef to them. They're not muscular. They're just big.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those guys can move. Like I said, it was a big man match, and having Davey Boy Smith end up winning with a submission win that Tankman had him in a Tankman driver where he flipped him around. He ends up flipping him back around into a crossface for a submission win. Now, it's one of these things, it's playing back to building up Davey Boy Smith as a former winner of the Opera Cup back in 2019. It's one of these things of, if you haven't watched MLW, you would recognize Davey Boy Smith. So it's one of these things. Calvin Tankman, he went down a little, but he didn't lose much in a loss.
Not at all.
This was a submission loss. It was a crossface. There's no way he's getting out of it.
No.
Plus, you're in the ring with a guy who's 250 plus and at least 6'4". Tankman is a big gentleman, but he's maybe 6'1".
Yeah.
So you're giving up some height as well as giving up some mobility due to the fact that you are heavier than your opponent.
Right.
That was throwing a wine barrel or a whiskey barrel at a giant redwood.
Right. So at the end of this, it's kind of like MLW. Like they shook hands and everything, right? At the end, which I like.
Yep.
It was kind of a no hard feelings. I love Davey Boy Smith Jr., big man who wrestles like a technician. It was I like their styles, like MLW says it's all about, right? But they seem to kind of go like, that's it for us. We'll see you next week, and then everything kind of fizzles out, I guess. And then there's a guy on the screen who cuts a promo that was pretty decent on, I guess, Jacob Fatu. You guys are gonna have to take it away who the hell is Ricky Shane Page, and what is he talking about?
Ricky Shane Page is a hardcore wrestler.
Yeah.
He's wrestled for the last 15 to 18 years, depending on what you see on Wikipedia and what you can see on Cage Match. But he is a big-time wrestler in the hardcore field. He can wrestle a decent match, but he relies on the hardcore match. And them going after the calling is a grouping of individuals that take things to the extreme, and in taking them to the extreme, the leader of this calling group is Raven. Now, Raven is not always present, but he's always there. And I was like, what do you mean he's not always present, but he's not always there? Akira, who is also in the group, and then you'll see other members wearing the masks.
Right.
And that can be anybody. It can be wrestler A, wrestler B, anybody just playing that part. But they have several wrestlers that are into the hardcore. They're grabbing at Raven being the leader, almost like Raven's flock.
Yeah.
But it's all the extreme, but it's basically ECW version 2023.
Mm-hmm.
That they'll win by any means necessary, but they love the hardcore. And it's, I mean, the Philly crowd just eats it up. And I was talking with a couple of the wrestlers, and I believe MLW is either planning later this year or the start of next year to be doing monthly tapings at the ECW arena. So I'll be spending some money to go, but they're wanting to put out as much content as they can, but they want to keep it relevant. They don't want to go in and tape like this episode. This was taped back in April when I went.
Yeah.
So it's 2.5 to 3 months old.
Wow.
But they're pretty good at, you have to look online to find spoilers.
Yeah.
But they're almost like the NWA. They're there if you want to find them, but you have to dig pretty deep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lucky. I never want to find spoilers. I'm happy to let it unroll.
This guy, this was the first time I had seen Ricky Shane Page, and I had maybe imbibed a little during the course of the show, so my eyesight wasn't what it was. And my first thought was Bray Wyatt lost some weight.
That's what I thought. Was it Bray?
Yeah. My next thought was, has this guy thought this all the way through? He's going after the Samoan werewolf.
Samoan werewolf.
And he thinks he will not only survive this, but be elevated to a higher plane of sorts with Raven of all people. Nothing against Raven, but when have any of his factions achieved what they set out to do? Raven with a faction is like Brain with a plan to take over the world, or Wile E. Coyote with an Acme delivery. It's never going to go as planned and blow up in your face. Run away while you have a chance. This isn't the fight you really want, bro.
It's fair. I do have 2 questions for you before I ask you guys what you think. What would you give the rating out of 5 stars for the show? But 2 questions for you.
Okay.
What about me? What about Timmy?
Shut the fuck up.
I got him. How many stars for Fusion, Dave? Would you give it out of 5 for this episode?
Out of 5, I mean, it wasn't bad. I'd give it maybe 3.25 stars. It's the matches all were solid. The storytelling is very good, but like the women's match, you have 2 women in there that have been wrestling for only a couple years.
Yeah.
that's the only thing I can really say about MLW, with the exception of when Taya was there and a couple other indie darlings that were actually good wrestlers.
Right.
That they don't have a really big female roster.
Yeah.
Right.
But if they have one or two female matches highlighted at each of the tapings, it's good, because these tapings go for 3 to 4 weeks of wrestling. So maybe every other week you have a female match feature. It keeps the story going. But I mean, 3.25 stars, maybe 4, but at least 3.25 stars. But I mean, it was a good, solid show, and it showed a mixture of styles.
Yeah.
Which I always like. So
What about you, Jeremy?
I'm in agreement with Dave. 3.25, 3.5 stars. Solid. We got 2 solid matches out of it. The opening match was properly placed. That was an opener match. It was good for what it was. And the Tankman match, the Tankman Davey Boy Smith match was phenomenal. 3.5 stars in Dave Meltzer's world. That's almost 4, which is close to 5. So,
just as good as 5.5.
Just as good as 7.
You beat me to the joke. That's what I was going to do. Good for you. I agree with you guys. I'd say I said in my head probably 3.5 stars. So my first experience of MLW, positive.
Yep.
I thought the women's match, just like you guys, was some experience needs to happen there. It went a bit long for me, but I did see Becca, or B3CCA as she calls herself.
Yeah.
In a Twitter showing a Twitter video today where she had a chair. Someone was lying outside the ring. She had a chair on top of them, and she ran and cannonballed herself on top of it and stood up, and it looked pretty cool. And I don't want everybody to be doing hardcore all the time, but
right.
She's got some talent. I don't know if this was her best match, but I thought the show was great, and I enjoyed covering it. We'll do that at least as long as there's no NWA USA. So
yeah,
I'm glad we got into it. Let's go to a segment we like to call Championship Wrestling from Jeremy.
I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
The following is a presentation of the United Wrestling Network.
It's time for Championship Wrestling from Jeremy.
Dave Marquez hasn't noticed yet that we're using his voice. He was on just out of the blue, the Alliance Guys podcast.
Fantastic. Listen.
It's amazing. I hope everybody.
So much insight.
I didn't watch it at the time, and then I ended up just sitting there. I'd put it on pause for a while, and I'd walk away, and I'd get a drink, and I'd just be thinking, just like Marquez just laying down some really interesting stuff. And also DK and Jaden, along with Jay, like their opinions, like these guys held firm. Like they don't always agree with Dave,
Yep.
I think a lot of guys, and I'm sometimes one of them, just maybe being Canadian, has a tendency to go, "Oh, great point." They're like, "We tend to disagree."
Yeah.
And Dave was like, and that's fine, And there was a variety of different subjects about things that have happened with the NWA and in the past, and he was very vocal. Go watch the latest episode of the Alliance Guys podcast from this past week on Thursday.
I think that's one of the things that kind of sets us apart, us and the Alliance Guy. We're not marks in your traditional sense of, oh, I'm just going to eat up whatever you say because you're a wrestling personality and I want to suck your bumbo hole. You know, if a placement were to come into any sphere for any of us in the wrestling world, I'd gladly take it if an opportunity arose. But even then, I'll criticize you if I think that you're messing up. I'm not that guy that's gonna powder your toast for you just to make you feel better. You know, and I really enjoyed the conversation that they had with David because of that, because they did hold firm to no, you're wrong on that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very cool. You know, there are a lot of strong-willed personalities, and no one got mad, no one got upset, no one was unprofessional or rude. It was
exactly
so good. You know, and Jay's friends with Dave, and you know, and it's so cool that you know they were able to pull that. Like Dave Marquez was watching and just said, I called, like he basically called, like I think texted Jay and said, can I come on and kind of talk about some of this? And it turned into from a really good show into a great show. So really dug it. Over to you for UWM's top matches of the week.
We're starting off this week with Memphis and DePope versus Righteous Ryan Rembrandt. This match went almost 11 minutes, and I was very impressed with Ryan. We've seen him for about a year and some change now in Memphis Wrestling, and this was his first main event, and he thrived, I felt. Great. It helped being across the ring from such a seasoned veteran as DePope, but he held his own here. Since the Pope was facing Righteous Ryan, that also meant that he was actually wrestling the entire Righteous path. And sure enough, Reverend Ashhole Taylor got involved and hit the Pope with a collection plate. But Ray Collins came out to even the odds a little for the Pope. The Pope hit the double knees to the back of a prone and alone, propped up in the corner like Weekend at Bernie's-esque Righteous Ryan, and got the roll up for the win. Really, like I said, really good outing here for the first main event that Righteous Ryan has been in. I've seen his name pop up a couple of times on lists of top wrestlers in the indie scene on Twitter a couple different times. So that's got me intrigued to search out if he's got anything further outside of Memphis. Because he's good, really, really good, and
I thought Pope made him look even better, right? Yeah.
I don't think he's really gotten a chance to really shine there too much yet.
I would agree, and he had the right guy across the ring from him.
Yeah, and that's what I'm hoping, that this match with the Pope kind of elevated him a little bit with the committee, you know.
Right.
We then go to our championship wrestling presented by CarShield match of the week, and I had to go with the United Wrestling Television Network championship match between Benevolent Jack Banning and Kevin Blackwood.
Yes.
I am unfamiliar with Blackwood, but he's been drafted to MLW, so I will have the opportunity to see him wrestle more in the near future. So I'm looking forward to that. And from what I saw in this match, he's an innovative guy, 32 years of age, so still a lot of gas left in the tank. Trained at Pepper Parks' Grapplers Anonymous, according to Cage Match, and debuted in 2016. If you want more details about this match, treat yourself and go to Memphis Wrestling YouTube channel and watch it.
Yeah.
And then stick around for after the match. King had some strong words for the benevolent one.
Mm-hmm.
So treat yourself. Go watch.
Treat yourself.
And as always, if you're not watching Memphis Derby City and Championship Wrestling presented by CarShield, may all your presents be regifted fruitcakes.
Ooh.
Oh, man. When I was a kid, I had a theory that there were only 12 fruitcakes in the whole world. That they just kept being recycled as a thing for a gift for somebody.
There was 13, but one of them got used as the cornerstone for I believe it was the what's that little the Lincoln Memorial.
Yes. I'm sure that's the case. It was a good week in UWN. They're gearing up for Golden Ticket. It's also that weird thing where Derby and Championship Wrestling are basically running the same show.
Yeah.
So I look forward to that ending. But,
They will. They are taping more rounds at the beginning of August for Derby City, so expect some immediately after.
Right. Thank you, my friend. As always, phenomenal job. And we go over now to our fantasy booker in a segment we call I Respect You, Booker Man. I gotta be faster with these logos. And there you go. We need a Dave logo right up here above. Well, I'll put you in the middle, but we're on my screen. You're on my right. So anyway, now you're in the middle. Dave, you posed this question for all of us. If EC3, dare you put it out there, as Fuzz said in the Discord, how could you bring that into the world? If EC3 isn't able to defeat Tyrus for the 10 pounds of gold at NWA 75, where does he end up in the pecking order?
Well, I'm going to flip on this a little, and in the words of the late, great Owen Hart, enough is enough. It's time for a change. I'm not Billy. I have no idea what they have in store at 75, but Tyrus has had his time. It's time to move on. He's been champion since Hard Times 3 back in November. And when he defends August 27th at 75, it will be 287 days as champion. It's not a good showing. He's defended it, 3 or 4 times? He may be injured. He's up there in age. He's at least 50.
Yep.
There's some wrestlers that can still go. He is not one of them. He can talk, and he'd be great as whether it be a manager or put him in the booth, depending on what happens with Velvet. Maybe move him to the booth. But EC3 would be a change. It doesn't have to be a long change, but change is good. His past storyline with Tom sets Tom up as a challenger for the 10 pounds of gold if EC3 is allowed to claim the 10 pounds of gold at 75. Plus, EC3 can work with almost any style of wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
He has the size, but he can also work down or work up. Plus, he has very good psychology, ring psychology, and he makes you stop and think.
Right.
I really don't agree with the control your narrative, but whatever works, works. He has name recognition from being in WWE and Impact. Plus, being in Impact, he has history with Tyrus. So it's one of these things that I believe it's time for a change. If he loses, he'll have to start all over again. And he's already given up the national title. Yeah. So he has everything to lose and 10 pounds of gold to win. He's also now running Exodus Pro Wrestling out of Cleveland, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Their first show is coming up a couple weeks before. It's coming up Saturday, August 12th. It is Control Your Narrative based, but he also has some NWA talent showing up. And it's another place that NWA could run shows and do tapings outside of their normal area. It's an untapped market for the NWA. And I believe it would be beneficial for both himself and the NWA. Plus, he's also been working OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
They, back in the day, were basically the starting point for WWE talent. That
Right.
they would go there. Al Snow, who you may know from ECW and WWF, WWE with Head, he is running OVW. So there's a possible crossover that if Al Snow is willing to allow talent to wrestle both for OVW, which has television, and possibly involve them if it benefits both OVW and the NWA. If Billy would allow it, I mean, he's already having his former national champion be on TV there. Why not? All it does is it strengthens the bond of working with other promotions to better everybody around them.
Right.
So, I mean, in my eyes, EC3, if he doesn't win, it's a loss for the NWA.
Right.
Because he has nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
He's basically dropped everything and said, I'm going after the king of the mountain. I'm going after Tyrus. Now they worked in OVW, the WWE, and Impact Wrestling together. They are friends. They're both featured on the Three Wise Men podcast. So I'm sure he would do his best to have a passable match with him, but there has to be a change. And I think with the NWA not featuring Tyrus, my leg's injured. I can't do anything. I will be there to defend my title, but right now I'm not able to do anything. That storyline begs for a change, begs for him to drop it, and he doesn't even have to look bad in a loss. He can do a loss where his knee or his ankle or whatever part of his leg is injured and he can't get back up. So it's a count out and he loses the belt, but was never pinned. So
Could happen.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and I mean, I'm glad I'll be there to see it. I'm just praying to whatever entity you may pray to that this happens.
I hear you, buddy. Tyrus sits at 256 days as champion right now. Maybe 3 title defenses, maybe 4.
Yeah.
He sits below Trevor Murdoch, which he will pass if he wins at 75, and above Christian Cage and Sting and AJ Styles and Cole Cabana and Barry Windham, and it's time.
Yeah,
and I don't want EC3 to rehab his career, and I don't want the national title to be so beleaguered anymore either. So I mean, I think the answer to what you're saying is he's got to win. You know, here's stuff he could do, but he's got to win.
Yeah.
And who better?
I mean, if he loses, he has to start all over again, and they put all this momentum behind him with this storyline of him winning and the storyline of him with Thrillbilly and what happened with Pollo and him going after Tom and Tom going after the national title and not winning. The NWA has invested too much in him storyline wise that if he loses, you mess up your other two storylines.
Yeah. I'm not sure what this means, and but Mike says if he loses, make him smell Lethal's gear from 2012. I won't say more. I don't get it. Maybe you guys get it, but it can't be good. We love you, Mike. Let me just go back to the chat as we wrap up here, but thanks, Dave, as always. Phenomenal. Tyrus is the worst NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, says Willie. As Jeremy, I think this was you, the king. He's the mountain in this case. He's so dumb he thinks a pharmacist is a lady who works on a farm. Would be great as a float in a parade. This was my favorite one. May all your presents be a photo of Tyrus wearing gym shorts and eating 100 hot dogs at a picnic. Oh, I think he just threw up a little in his mouth, Willie. What else? Anything else we got in the chat? What did Mike say here? If you're not watching, I think that was for the UWN. May your bowels implode.
Ooh.
That's that's almost as bad as listening to or smelling Lethal's ring gear. I don't smell anyone's ring gear. You know what I want, Dave? One thing, when Tyrus goes down, whether it's at 75 or anywhere else, I don't want this a situation where there's a count out. I don't want Hulk Hogan comes into the ring like he did back in the day, and everyone would be down, and he'd hit someone with a chair, and he'd slide someone else and make them champion. I don't want any of that shit. I want him to make a mistake, even if the knee buckles. EC3 lays him out and pins him clean. Tyrus got a clean win over, even though it was a three-way. He got a clean win over Murdoch.
Yep.
I want to, and let's, he sounds like he's a guy who does the right thing. Let's see a clean win and a new champ on the way when he makes the way out.
Yeah.
I love you all too. So reminder, if you mail back gear for alterations, please wash the gear first. Understood. Wow. That's terrible. That is like an hour and 30 minutes. Not bad, guys. With all the stuff we had to get through. Really enjoyed MLW. We'll see. We're doing that again next week. I haven't heard anything about any NWA USA coming up. So hopefully we're on MLW. Yeah.
Just a reminder for MLW, I don't know if you were going to mention this, Tim. They have a YouTube channel. You can catch up on old episodes, but they have every week, Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, they have their episode of Fusion. So either catch up, jump on. If you like it, cool. If not, move on. It's one of these things of, I say it's a buffet, but wrestling in itself, I've heard it said it's like a wine. There's different types of wine. Find the kind of wine you like and enjoy it. You may not like every kind of wine, but wrestling is just different types of storyline and fighting. If you enjoy it, more power to you.
Great call. I'll have to, I put the link in there in the chat. I'll start adding it to the banners as we do this stuff. Speaking of online stuff, where can they find you, Dave?
They can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Dave Scooby, and I'm over on TikTok at Dave Scooby, followed by the number 1.
How about you, Jeremy?
You can find me over on Twitter at HJWOTS and now on Threads at Championship Wrestling Jeremy. And then you can find me over on YouTube at Worm5559.
I'm going to add that one in on Threads.
Yes.
I am also on Threads. They're like, you have 229 followers. And I'm like, what is Threads? So I'm also on Threads and everywhere else at the Alliance Gold. Obviously, more important than all of us is the whole Alliance family, Alliance-Wrestling at the Alliance blog on all social media platforms, including one I've never even heard of. It's like Jay was saying the other night, like, we're on Twitch, we're on Kick, and I was on my couch going, we're on Elbow, we're the Alliance blog, now on Poke. I don't know. It's stuff I don't even know anymore. I don't know what Kick is, so it's for you crazy kids, you young guys out there like Jeremy. Join us every Thursday, won't you? Well, not us, but the A-Team, so to speak, at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for the Alliance Guys podcast. That is tomorrow night. Where J. Cal, DKM, and Jaden are always running down power and all things NWA. As we mentioned earlier, from a perspective of guys who have been doing this for 17 years or something insane like that. It's a great show, great watch every night. Every Tuesday at 5 Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, Jay runs the pre-party right before Power comes on the air on YouTube. Jay's there on his channel running 1 hour right before the show where he'll tell you all about it, as well as anything that is happening leading up to 75. Thank you guys for being here. I don't know, Mike. I don't know, buddy. Willie Bowen says the only thing tires can clean is a plate full of food. Boom.
Hey, if you've got leftovers in your fridge and you want them gone, all you got to do is go to a mirror and say cheese fries 3 times. The tires will appear. Clean your refrigerator out.
Wow.
And on that note, until next time, we will see you at the matches.
Thanks for joining the stream. This has been a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you'll never miss a future episode? I'd also like to remind you we do a live stream every Tuesday at 5 p.m. before NWA Power. You can find us on social media at The Alliance Blog. And until next time, we are The Alliance.